What's up, guys? How's it going? This is what are we up to? Episode 4 now?
Yes,
It's
sir.
episode 4 of EcoForge. I really want to get like some type of like better theme music. Like I like the storm, I really do. I like the thunder crash.
Yeah.
It was a very low budget. No, it wasn't even low budget. I have no skills at all for animating that. I would like to get music, but then you have to buy like royalties to play the song every single time, and
Sounds complicated.
and expensive, and we didn't have any royalty money to pay out. And I'm not a musician. I can't make anything. I have no friends that would be willing to make us an intro.
No.
But just something to like
Really get your blood flowing.
pump you up before you just get depressed as fuck. Like something like that. It's
Bring you up high and then crash you down.
Well, no, it's just like a little bit of sugar with the vinegar. That's what it is. Honey with the vinegar. Oh, what the fuck is that phrase?
I have no idea
Oh,
what you're
Jesus.
talking about.
You need to sweeten something really bitter.
Okay.
It's kind of like ska music where it sounds so upbeat and happy, but then you listen to the lyrics and it's just the most depressing, horrible thing on the fucking planet. Like we need that duality of the show where we need like a really upbeat thing, and then people know that we're going to tell them the topic, and it's going to be a super depressing topic that is just going to, hang over their heads like a dark cloud all fucking day.
Right.
So like we need some upbeat music, and then I can be like, today our topic is how the Amazon rainforest is burning to the ground, and everybody is just now finding out about it.
What?
It's like I need to be able to pitch horrible topics. Be like, oh, after this upbeat music, guess what? All the sea turtles in the ocean are dying because they're eating plastic bags because they look like jellyfish. And then people are like, oh, okay. Like, they need something
To kind of balance
to balance
out.
it before we just hit them with this horrible, terrible, depressing shit where we're like, oh, you remember how you thought you were just driving your car and now you're finding out you're killing the planet and you're probably going to die with it. Climate change.
Yeah.
We need happy music to go, okay, well, at least there's a good song while I'm told about why I'm going to die in the next 50 years.
I think we need a happy music at the end to make people feel like there's hope, even if we never quite leave them with any.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there like a hopeful song? What song leaves you with hope? If you were to put a song at the end of this show that told everybody, you're probably going to die, but everything's going to be all right, what would you play?
Well, it's a beautiful world.
It's beautiful. Is that just ironic? There's like the earth's in the background on
it?
fire. Little penguins just running across the screen covered in oil. The Amazon's on fire.
See trees of green as the Amazon's on fire.
Yeah. Is that more just for irony?
Probably. I wouldn't be. Yeah, because I don't know. I feel like it'd actually mess people up quite a bit. Like,
right? Maybe give them nightmares.
Yeah.
Do you think we're giving people nightmares?
No, not enough people are listening.
Oh, shit.
Sorry.
Just like 1 or 2 people out there with nightmares?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? This show gives me fucking nightmares. I will say that. This show, holy shit.
Yeah, you guys don't realize it, but we're researching this shit for 2 weeks, and it messes with us a lot.
Yeah. So if you think about this, technically this is your guys' fault.
Mm-hmm.
We kill ourselves for you. We're fucking sadists. We suffer for 2 weeks with this horrible shit, and then we try to give it to you with this little more entertaining spin on it. I'm going to need therapy. I'm going to need massive amounts of therapy because I'm either left depressed and hopeless or just screaming and cursing and so angry because there's so many stupid people in the world. Like I bounce back and forth between the two.
You already needed therapy way before this podcast.
That's true. All right. Well, let's get into our topic then. We got climate change. We got the rainforest. It's all kind of interconnected.
Yes.
That's probably my main concern. Because everybody has their first reactions when you see the fact that the Amazon's on fire. A lot of people think the animals or you can think of the people that are living in there. A lot of people, they're just looking at the social media where, you saw the smoke going across San Paulo. Everybody was putting that on social media. It just looked like this apocalyptic world where there's so much smoke that, it's covering the sun, and it looks apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And then all these talk about climate change, and the earth heating up, and there's fires everywhere. Like, this isn't the only fire we've been hearing about the past couple months. You got Alaska's on fire, the Siberian tundra in Russia is on fire, the Amazon's on fire, California's on fire.
Rainforests in Africa are on fire. Probably
it's everywhere.
Indonesia and Malaysia.
And they say this is just going to keep getting worse and worse as everything heats up and dries out.
Yeah.
And, it feels apocalyptic. Like, it feels like, it's easy to walk around like California or even here in Arizona where you're like, climate change doesn't seem to be real. Like, everything looks like it's going to be okay. It's bright and sunny and beautiful out, and then all of a sudden you get all the forest fires, blow all that smoke into California, and you see these super hellish pictures coming out of a bright, sunny, happy California, and it's kind of like an actualization of climate change. Like, it's giving you this visual of, oh, okay, I kind of see where these keep happening more and more and more until this is, the more common backdrop of the environment. And so I think that's what really shook people about the Amazon fires was the fucking pictures people were posting were post-apocalyptic. San Paulo did not look the same, and you're saying, something that most people think of the Amazon as like the lungs of the planet and CO2 and, all this. It kind of played really well into the climate change conversation that's been going on lately because people see the Amazon as, this giant focal point of environmentalism.
Yeah.
Right? And so when we're talking a society where you can't not hear about climate change now, it was kind of the perfect symbol of this, major piece of our environment is being destroyed, and look at, what it's like to live in San Paulo now. Is this the future of our world? So it was all very, very symbolic, and I think that's why it resonated with so many people, because the pictures coming out of there were just absolutely awful.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are really tuning into the whole climate change thing. They're kind of recognizing that it is occurring, and we need to be taking actions to stop it. And just seeing these fires that were lit intentionally kind of felt like a fuck you to the face to like the rest of the world. It's like, yeah, we don't care about that. We just are going to light these fires. And
well, I think that was the stranger part. A lot of people don't know is that all the fires in the Amazon were purposefully lit. That was a main difference between the Amazon and all the other fires we were talking about all over the world. Is all the other ones that happen in Russia and California and Alaska and all these other places. They as far as I know, they were not intentionally lit. Maybe accidentally, but I think it was from, just happenstance, a thunderstorm or something. Like, it was a naturally occurring fire because everything's so dry.
Yeah.
I don't think, definitely none of the other ones were lit for agriculture outside of the Amazon, intentionally, outside of maybe Africa. I don't know about the African ones.
I'm pretty sure all the rainforest fires that are occurring around the world, it's not just Brazil. As I was saying, like the rainforests in Africa, Southeast Asia, those are all intentionally lit.
That's right. I forgot about Asia.
That's a very common practice in rainforests to clear land. But like California, Alaska, those were all environmentally related. Yeah. So lightning strikes. Sometimes it's accidental human cause.
Right, but definitely not on purpose.
Yeah, it's not to clear land or economic gain.
So I think that was the big difference of, when you talk about the fires in the Amazon, it's kind of hard, like, because like when you talk about California and stuff, it's like, oh, this really sucks. Like, this is strictly just kind of the climate right now.
Yeah.
Everything's really dry and it goes up very quickly, and then, they're trying to fight it. They don't want those to start. Where then you go down and to these rainforests in the Amazon or in Asia or in Africa, and you're finding out they're purposefully lighting these things to clear land. It's just such a I think it resonated with a lot of people more than anything, simply because of the symbol that is the Amazon. Like that's kind of like Mecca for a lot of people's idea of saving the environment, like at least people our age, because you started out with, all through the 90s when we were growing up was save the rainforest. Like that's really when, in my mind, the environmental movement started for me.
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing we all heard is save the Amazon. The Amazon, it's this place that makes 20% of the oxygen of the planet, which apparently may or may not be true. We were watching a documentary.
Yeah.
What was it? It was that weird one with Will Smith that he narrated.
Our Strange Planet.
One Strange Rock.
One Strange Rock.
One Strange Rock. Yeah. If you watch the first episode, they were like, technically, it's true. It makes 20% of the Earth's oxygen, but they said that there's so much biodiversity in the Amazon that all of the animal life in the Amazon actually uses up all of that oxygen. So next to none of the oxygen that it produces gets out.
Yeah. Well, it's none of the oxygen that the trees produce that is what is being used by the rest of the world. I guess it inadvertently feeds
itself.
Algae in the ocean, right?
No, that's where we get our oxygen.
Yeah.
So like what actually oxygenates the planet that we breathe comes from a lot of plant life in the ocean.
Yeah.
And then the oxygen that the trees produce in the Amazon, it does make like 20% of the oxygen production, but we're not breathing that air.
Yeah.
All of the life forms within the Amazon rainforest apparently consumes all of that air.
Yeah.
But you always heard that as a kid, it's the lungs of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And you look into it more now and it's like, oh, it's definitely the, carbon sink of the planet. Like it definitely soaks up more carbon out of the atmosphere than, damn near anything else on this planet.
Yeah.
And then, you hear tons of things like that, that it has, this insane biodiversity. That there's more biodiversity in the Amazon than anywhere else on the planet.
Yeah.
There's constantly new species being found there still. There's people living in the Amazon that have never been contacted.
Right.
I mean, it is such a wild, crazy place. And so it's very, very unique, but quite possibly the most unique place on the entire planet. So it captured, the environmental movement symbolically more than anything else. And I think that's why it was the biggest, most successful environmental campaign.
Yeah.
Where the rainforest was very, very easy to get behind because it was so unique and different and special. It was arguably the most special place on the planet. And so it unlike most environmental movements where a lot of the things are very fringe on our society, like I know a lot of people where if you talk any of the major things that the environmental movement pushes, they go, okay, shut up, tree hugger. You fucking hippie. Like, shut up. Go recycle something.
Yeah.
Fucking, I'm going to go feed a plastic bag to a sea turtle. Fuck off. Like, it's,
Please don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. It's the only one where people, like, everybody accepts it. Like it's the universally accepted. Like it would be hard pressed to find somebody outside of the people who live there in Brazil who are trying to make their livelihoods from, exploiting this forest. Everybody else, I mean, pretty much, rainforest sounds cool. Like save it,
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it doesn't cost them anything, but it's generally accepted.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do for an environmental movement. But I think that's why it resonated with everybody. Maybe it's just because we all grew up here and Save the Rainforest.
Right.
But it was I felt personally devastated and hurt seeing all the photos of it on fire again, because for a long time they did almost save the rainforest. They definitely dropped deforestation down due to that huge campaign through the 90s. They definitely dropped it down. What was it, like 2004, I believe?
Yeah, it was 2004. I think they were able, since deforestation really started occurring like the 80s and stuff, they were able to drop it by like 80% of the deforestation rates by 2004-ish.
Yeah.
which is amazing.
They
That's
instituted
amazing.
a bunch of things that they did. They had international support. You had the Amazon Fund. You had a bunch of international companies making promises to not buy, goods from Brazil that were directly related to it. A bunch of Brazilian organizations within the government were created to monitor the Amazon. Satellites were really becoming prevalent at that time, that they were able to use, these modern satellites to really take a look at the Amazon, and that allowed them to protect it in ways that they could never do before. So there a whole bunch of things came out, and it almost looked like they were going to save the Amazon, and you kind of stopped hearing about it in the 2000s.
It kind of disappeared.
It did. I mean, they did really well until like recently, 2016, 17. It was doing really well. It was to pre-80s levels from everything I read, and it they were doing a pretty good job, and I know they had gotten a lot of protections for different reserves. I mean, they had over 350, almost 400 protected reserves throughout the Amazon, and it looked pretty good. So to see it on fire now, especially when we were dealing with all this shit from climate change, it felt so like climate change already felt hopeless.
Yeah.
And, we thought we had saved the symbol of environmentalism, the Amazon, and to see it on fire, especially, this was all taking place right as our, in our country, we were having the presidential climate talks, whatever they wanted to call them, town halls, I think.
Yeah, the CNN one.
Yeah, the CNN climate talks with all of our Democratic presidential candidates. And, we were so focused on a hurricane coming in, and, there's all these things that kind of queue up in the background,
The background.
Yeah, the background of what's going on. I wanted to say backdrop and background at the same time. Anyways, it was, it really sucked to, you kind of throw the Amazon in with everything that's going on with climate change, and it just really made it feel hopeless.
Yeah.
Like the symbol of it is on fire.
Yeah, I felt a lot of frustration just kind of doing the research on this and seeing how much, like, there's a lot of people who care about the Amazon, and then there's a lot of people who don't, and just kind of see it as a commodity, something that can make money. And I think that's really frustrating for me. I'm sure it is for you.
In the Amazon, yeah, I don't think a lot of people outside of Brazil see it that way.
Sure.
People got, let's go into that. So why, because that's the question on everybody's mind. If these fires are being set intentionally, if the Amazon's on fire, what is going on? Who's setting these fires? Why are they setting these fires? Where is this fire? And I think that's the question that immediately comes to a lot of people's minds, because I did see that. A lot of people on social media seemed very distraught, like the rest of us, that the Amazon was on fire, but nobody seemed to know more than that. Why?
Yeah.
Why is the Amazon on fire? Who's doing this? Who would like that on fire? No, that was a question a lot of people had. So why don't we get into that for everyone and kind of clarify why is the Amazon on fire?
Yeah. Well, one thing is that there isn't just like one big fire. There's multiple fires throughout the Amazon.
Oh, that's to put it lightly.
Yeah.
There's thousands.
Yeah. So just in 2019, there's been about 74,000 fires that have been lit, compared to 2018, which was 40,000, and that was for the whole year. We're, I don't know, not even finished with our 2000.
Yeah.
With this year. And another thing is that.
So why isn't it one big fire? Because that's a big misconception for people. So what do you mean? Why are there so many fires?
Fires. Basically, a lot of people are setting on. We got cattle ranchers and farmers who set the forest on fire so they can clear the land, so that then they can make it productive and raise cattle or grow soy, corn, sugarcane, whatever you want to call it.
Gotcha. So it's basically, it's not like California where it's like one fire and it grows and then it's moving across an area. What it
Yeah.
basically is the farming practice down there. It's a very common practice in the Amazon
Yeah, it's
and
called
all rainforest.
yeah, it's called slash and burn. It's
Right.
a very common practice.
It is, and it's easy to let it get out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can actually pull up the satellite images, I recommend anybody who listens to this podcast that wants to look into it, look into the satellite images. It's scary.
Yeah.
But you'll notice is you look at this map and there's just 7,000 little dots all over the map of all these fires that are going on, and so what happens is these farmers will clear 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acres, like they'll clear a couple acres,
Mm-hmm.
but you got 7,000 different people doing this all at the same time.
Yeah.
And the reason why there's so many fires going on right now is the dry season. So what they do is the typical way that they clear the land is first they'll go in and there's certain types of trees that make really good lumber. So
Yeah.
what they'll do is they'll go in and they'll find these trees, they'll cut down the good lumber trees and sell those, which is when people talk illegal logging, that's the illegal logging taking place. And that's usually the first thing that they do when they're clearing an area.
Yeah. They gotta get the
You get why burn perfectly good wood, right? And then they sell it. So then what they do is after that, a lot of times they'll go back and they'll just cut certain trees down. Sometimes they'll cut a bunch of trees down. And basically, when you get these trees out of there, there's not a lot of precipitation because the trees make all of the rain in the rainforest. So
Yeah.
the trees make the precipitation. And so what happens is all of this undergrowth, this bush growth, brush, essentially dries out because now it's not getting the rainfall, and two, it's exposed to the sunlight. There's no more canopy there, and so what happens is it gets very, very, very dry. So then you just light it on fire, and it just goes, and the fire gets hot enough that it burns out all of these trees, and so it's a really cost-effective way of clearing this land, and you also get from the trees, when you burn them, you get the ash, which gives you a little bit of nutrients to put into the soil, and it'll give you nutrients for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So it's a really common agricultural method of clearing a piece of land. But if you look at it on a map, it's not like super wild and out of control. It's like in like little squares. You can see like straight burn lines, where they went through and, they cleared little pieces of land. So it actually looks like agriculture. I mean, it's not a wildfire by any means. I mean, I don't want to call them controlled burns, but they're burning very specific little areas that they've prepared to burn. And it's in straight little lines.
Yeah. I guess one thing with that is that they've actually been able to determine that a lot of these fires occur along highways that run through the Amazon because it allows them to have access. And so pretty much they've seen as soon as a highway or a road has been cut through the Amazon, every year it just the forest slowly disappears away from the roadside and it expands until it's just agricultural fields and like the forest is off in the distance because they've been slowly cutting it back.
You can see it on the satellite images.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could pull up a picture of it. We can't do pictures right now with the software we're running, unfortunately. I would love to be able to pull up an image of it because it's very striking. It makes you understand that this is very human orchestrated because it's right off of roads. It's in these straight little lines, and you can kind of see the Amazon where all the fires are eating away at the outside of the forest, and they're slowly eating its way in. And then you got this highway that runs through the Amazon, and it's spreading out from there. But in the dense center parts of the forest, they're not on fire.
No,
it's people slowly eating away from the access they have to it. It's crazy how different it looks when you look at like a wildfire, in the aftermath of, like California, and then you look at this type of fire in the Amazon, and it has a majorly different look to it. You can tell it's directly human caused.
Yeah.
It doesn't look the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I don't know. It's hard to say. Like,
What is?
I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
It's all good. But so we've kind of touched on it already. Who is, so we've talked about the fires. Okay, so there's a bunch of them. We've
Yeah.
kind of gotten into who's doing it. So the main thing you got to understand about the Amazon is because this is human made, this is directly economically related.
Yes.
This is
most definitely.
entirely economically driven. So essentially, these people, they're trying to make a living. The major industry in Brazil is beef. So they raise cattle.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this beef is for their own consumption. They do sell some of it to other countries. I know America has bought beef in the past from them. I guess it's a lot lower now.
Yeah.
I guess, who was it? China that was buying most of it?
No, Hong Kong
Hong Kong.
was number 1 in beef exports from Brazil.
Gotcha.
And I think that's just mainly because they don't have enough land to raise
Yeah.
their cattle. We have a ton of land, so it's a lot easier for us to get our beef domestically.
So when we were buying mainly what you see now in America from Brazil related to the beef industry is all of the leather.
Mm-hmm.
So they sell all of the leather to American companies. A lot of these things are manufactured overseas. So they just sell the beef and the leather and everything overseas. So we don't see too much of the beef in the United States anymore,
No.
which is good, I guess. We still got our own beef problems, but mainly what we're seeing is the leather, which a lot of companies, said that they wouldn't buy leather from, cows that came from Brazil. Other companies said, well, you have to get certified and show us that, you're not burning the rainforest down to make these cows. But it's that's more on the regulation side of things.
Yeah, it's just how much of the not buying leather from Brazil is going to have an impact, because a lot of the demand is domestic beef.
Mm-hmm.
All the Brazilians are eating a ton of beef, and so, well, obviously when you kill a cow, you're going to have a hide.
Mm-hmm.
So as a raising of beef because there's a demand for the hide, or is it because of the meat?
I think it's more of the fact that because this is economically driven, any way that you put pressure on Brazil financially, because they don't have a whole lot of exports.
Sure.
So
let's make it more poor, you guys.
well, no, it puts issues on trade.
Yeah.
With Brazil, which is a huge, economic reason to make sure you're not burning down the rainforest, because that was one thing that came out of the campaign in the 90s, that it brought a lot of international awareness to the Amazon, and that's when things really changed in the early 2000s. But you got to understand, these people have no other way of making money, a lot of them. So if you know anything about Brazil has some of the largest slums in the world. Brazil is extremely poor.
Yeah.
They are a poverty-stricken nation, and right now they're in a big economic downturn.
Mm-hmm.
And these people don't have any opportunities. So you're talking, a huge chunk of their population is unemployed. Like some 13 million people are unemployed in Brazil.
We think that we have it bad.
The jobs that they do have don't pay well. I mean, you look up the slums of Brazil.
Yeah.
It is absolutely horrific. It's I couldn't imagine living in such conditions. And so then you have the fact that they have no economic opportunities
elsewhere.
And so the rainforest is like the only exploitable resource that they have in Brazil. And there is not a country on this planet that did not get rich exploiting some parts of the environment, whether it was in their own country or going to other countries like, we do in the Middle East for oil, where we are exploiting the environment, for economic growth.
Yeah. I mean, we've torn down entire mountains
to
get copper or something.
Yeah.
Entire mountains have disappeared for our economic growth. So it's kind of no wonder they kind of aim for the rainforest, the Amazon.
They don't have anything else.
Yeah.
So that if look at Brazil on a map, it's it's the entire fucking country is the Amazon. Like it makes up well more than 50% of their nation.
The Amazon takes up a good portion of the country.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was like,
It's both.
did you mean the continent?
No, it makes up a large portion of their country.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's very true.
They don't have anything else to make money off of. So the fact that they have opportunities, to pull wood out, or another thing they do is they mine. You can mine gold and diamonds in the Amazon. So these people are trying to make money doing something. So they're pulling logs out for lumber, selling those. They're trying to mine gold and diamonds in there. They're trying to, grow soy and other monocrops there. And then, of course, you got, they're like, the biggest cattle producer in the world? Something like that.
One of the top.
It's crazy how much, ranching goes on there. And so they don't have any other opportunities. And that is, one of the hardest things to hit home with the whole environmental movement in the Amazon, is because any place you find where the environment is really being devastated, you're going to find a very, very poor, disenfranchised populace. Poverty and environmental destruction go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And, and then it gets completely different when you become a rich country. Because then once you become a rich country and you've learned how to exploit things, you got to where you were because you were exploiting the environment.
Yeah.
Right? And then you just start exploiting it more and more and more, and then you're invading other countries to exploit their resources, and it's, the human race hasn't changed. Just instead of fighting for fertile land and food and stuff like that, we're fighting for other types of resources.
Yeah.
And, you look at these rainforests in Africa and in China and in the Amazon, and they're doing this because they need money.
Yeah.
It's not that they're just indifferent to saving the rainforest over themselves.
Yeah, that's kind of like, do I cut down a few trees and make money and feed my family, or do I not and starve and die?
Yeah, for some of them.
Yeah.
There are definitely successful multi-billion-dollar agricultural interests behind this as well.
Yeah, I was reading there's quite a few corporations involved as well.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely some... just like America, there's some,
greedy motherfuckers.
A lot of greed, a lot of very, very wealthy people at the top of this. They have their own problems with lobbyists.
Yeah.
And, multi-billion-dollar corporate interests. But, just like here in America, where you find some greedy multi-billion-dollar company like Exxon or any of the people trying to mine fossil fuels, whether it's through, coal or fracking or oil drilling, you're going to find some miner or some oil rig worker who's that's the only employment in his town, where if he wants to feed his family, well, he's got to go work in the mine. And you say, well, we're going to shut down coal, and all of a sudden these coal miners don't have jobs. There's a greed interest behind it of that corporation. Yes. ExxonMobil is evil.
Yeah.
Yes, BP every single person who's ever worked for BP should be locked up and thrown in prison for the rest of their life. Yes, but also at the same time, when you go down to the actual workers, a lot of people, if you removed that commodity or that job from their town, the whole town would go under.
Yeah,
there would be no more town. And so that's a huge economic driving force. So when you mix these socio-environmental and socioeconomic influences together, you see the problem. And so that's the main issue you got to remember about the Amazon, is you're talking about a country that's very poor, with a populace that doesn't have a lot of opportunities, and they have a limited amount of resources and things they can do. Yet on the fact that as a country, their economy is not doing great.
Yeah.
And you're telling them you can't cut down that rainforest because it's important to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And then you expect these poor people to just starve and die in slums.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Right. Well, that was something I was thinking about, is a lot of people were kind of wondering, well, what can we do? well, stop eating beef. Well, that's not quite going to work, but what if we incentivize other forms of production in Brazil? I don't know what there is, but maybe there is one thing that they are doing that isn't exploiting the rainforest, and we can be like, buy from these types of companies.
It's hard. Beef props up a large portion of their economy,
Right.
a massive portion of their economy.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we need to understand is that really there's probably not much reason to continue cutting down the rainforest. It's if people practiced effective agricultural practices, sustainable agricultural practices, if they raise beef correctly, they really wouldn't need to continue taking land.
That's very true.
Their farming and farming processes and their cattle raising processes are very inefficient, not very sustainable.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's actually a huge issue.
They degrade the environment a lot in their practices, and then once the land is degraded, they can't really use it. They don't know how to fix it. There's actually, especially historically, there was never really knowledge on how to grow crops sustainably, how to raise cattle sustainably, and be able to use a piece of land for a long period of time.
Yeah, it's a problem that we're seeing all over the world.
Yeah,
it's a really good point to bring up. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's so we kind of touched on this when we were talking about burning it down and the ash going into the soil. So it's a great thing to address. So a lot of people wonder, well, why do they keep burning more and more of it down? And so they're not raising more cows. It's not like they need more and more room to raise cattle or soy or all of these things. And you can see it on the satellite images, they're leaving barren land behind themselves, and they're cutting farther and farther into the rainforest. So what's happening is if you don't manage soil properly, it becomes really dry and brittle and nutrientless. And then this is when you get erosion really bad. This is what happened in the Dust Bowl in the United States. It's still happening with our monocrops all over the place. We have a massive amount of erosion here in the U.S. because of our agricultural practices. So it's a problem all over the world. There's not a country that doesn't have this issue, because what got really popular is large-scale mono agriculture, whereas they just grow like one or two things. So it's tons of soy, tons of corn, and that's all they grow.
Yeah.
And they don't reinforce the soil. They don't do any crop rotation. None of their practices sustain that soil's life. And that's what kills everything.
Yeah.
So what you see in the Amazon is when they burn it down, they put some nutrients in the soil with the ash from the trees for about 2 or 3 years. But as they overgraze it with the cattle, or if you just grow, one crop there, they deplete all of the nutrients in the soil, and that's why they have to move to the next acre of land that's still covered with forest. They burn it down and they move over to there because that soil is still good. And that's one thing that the Amazon does not have, is it does not have very good soil.
No.
It's not, ironically. The trees produce a lot of their own nutrients through the ecosystem, but you remove that ecosystem out of the equation, and all of a sudden you're left with very, inefficient soil. It can be done, but you have to use very smart agricultural practices, and you're talking about a bunch of farmers that they don't know how to farm. These are poor people with no training who just go out there and burn the land down and then try to grow stuff there, and a lot of them are not successful.
Yeah.
They burn it down for nothing.
Yeah.
It's definitely something to keep in mind when you're talking about it, because you're right. They could, update their practices, and they've already cleared enough land.
There's a lot of land available.
Right. So if you fortified that soil and instituted these sustainable practices and didn't overgraze and practice sustainable agriculture, I bet you they could still continue making all the beef that they're making and all the soy and all the stuff that they do export without cutting down more of the Amazon rainforest. So you're right. We probably could do that. We could send people in to teach them how to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, because it's not really effective to be like, no, you're not allowed to do that anymore. And they're like, well, what can I do? That's like all that's available. Like, well, you can't do it. Good luck. It's like, okay, well, we're kind of screwed then. Thanks. And then they end up hating the people trying to save the rainforest because they're screwing them over, and it creates animosity. So
there's a lot of animosity between people in the fossil fuel industry or any of the like what you would consider working class industries and the environmental community, because you're basically costing people jobs. I mean, that is the hardest pushback that supports people like Trump in our culture, where you're taking the only thing away that these miners know. That's all they know.
Yeah.
And you take that away, and suddenly you're the enemy because you're taking money out of their pockets and food off the table, and their entire towns could go bankrupt. Then your house has no value, and that's a horrific thing to tell somebody, because there's a rare species of bird that lives in the area. That is the hard thing to grasp for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They can't just pack up and move. They don't have a job that applies to anything else. I've been a miner for 20 years. Oh, well, we're making mining illegal. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll just completely go apply that to another profession.
Right. Yeah.
You're fucked. And that's why these people fight so hard, and there is a lot of animosity there. That's actually how a lot of the environmental movement started in Brazil, was through a gentleman called Chico Mendes, who he was trying to promote sustainable farming of different commodities that the rainforest provides. So one of the things they were taking out was gum. So they had gum trees there, and they also had I believe some rubber. He was a tapper, so I believe they would get gum and rubber out of the trees. There was also different fruit and stuff and things that you could harvest sustainably from the forest. And so they actually inadvertently started this because they were getting their livelihood from these trees existing. So if you kept cutting the trees down and burning the forest, well, now they're losing their livelihood. So it was actually a combatants from those people who were using the trees for their livelihood, and the ranchers who wanted to cut them down and burn them for their livelihood. And then this whole movement actually kicked off because the cattle ranchers assassinated Chico Mendes.
Yeah.
And that's what really started this movement in the late 80s that brought it to what it is now today. But there was a gentleman promoting a sustainable agricultural use of the rainforest, that you could make more money sustainably maintaining the forest as opposed to burning it down for cattle.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think especially for these farmers who, as we already kind of mentioned, they don't have a lot of money, and so they're trying to make money by burning the rainforest down and growing crops, but that's not a very consistent work. It's not very consistent work, and so if they could be taught how to sustainably grow corn or soy or raise cattle, and they were able to maintain a piece of land, they'd be able to continuously make money for themselves and support themselves without having to worry about, well, the land's, deteriorating. Now I got to move on and, take this piece of land and however, whatever the process is.
And it can be done. Do you want to hear an interesting piece of history?
Oh, dear.
So they didn't think that large-scale civilizations could live in the Amazon, right? Because the soil is so bad, it's hard to grow crops. It's it's a difficult place to live, quite possibly the most dangerous environment on the entire planet. Everything there wants to kill you, from caterpillars to giant cats that will eat you. It's an incredibly dangerous place. Yeah, it's the last thing you want to see at night. Little cat eyes staring, back at you from the jungle.
Ninja?
They're gonna eat you. So it's like everything there can kill you, and it's so hard to grow crops there
Yeah.
that they didn't think large scale civilizations could live there. But they found out that they're finding traces of humanity back to at least 12,000 years, which until very recently we didn't think there was people living there that long ago. And then what they also found is they found traces where over the course of, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years possibly, they actually fortified the soil with old sustainable practices that we're just now learning. These people knew about it thousands and thousands of years ago, and they actually, you can find really fertile plots deep in the Amazon rainforest where the soil has actually been changed and fortified because of thousands of years of human agriculture there. So they find traces of these older civilizations and human activity, and they're finding soil where this soil is completely different than the rest of the rainforest, and this could only have come from hundreds and probably thousands of years of human agriculture.
Yeah.
And so it is possible. Like, if you know what you're doing and you make an effort, you can do it. That's how ancient civilizations did live in the Amazon.
Yeah.
It is possible.
It's actually really cool because you can actually restore degraded land. So even if there's been massive erosion, it's still possible to bring it back and create fertile soils there. So the land that's already been burned down and used up, that's still a viable piece of land that people just need to take the time to, fix it, and then they can live
They
off
need to know
of
how
it.
to do it.
Yeah.
There's no funding for this. There's no education. And people don't like to change. I mean, we know how to do this here in the United States, and how many farms are doing this and how many are monoculture, massive things, buying seed from Monsanto.
Yeah.
Tell these people to do it.
That's
and,
a whole different can of worms.
Okay, but still, we know about these things here in the United States, and we won't fucking do it.
Yeah.
So it's very, very hard for people to change.
That's very true.
And I would like to think we're more educated and more, environmentally concerned here in the United States than these poverty-stricken places in the Amazon. So if that's a hard sell here, that's going to be hard as shit to sell to some dude who's living in a fucking shack who's just trying to fucking, make ends meet.
Yeah.
That's going to be incredibly hard to do because I don't know if anybody out here farms, all right? That shit is complicated. I'm lucky if I can keep a couple plants alive. Are you kidding me? That requires education. Like, someone has to show you how to that's a very complex farming method. Someone has to show you how to do that.
Yeah, people are actually getting college degrees for farming.
It is a college degree. That shit is fucking difficult. I'm trying to watch YouTube videos and stuff of how to just keep a couple plants alive here in Arizona because we have such, crazy weather. And we planted, I think at one point we had 100 plants here going. All right. And we only got shit from the peppers. Yeah. I had a couple jalapeno plants that were just badass who toughed it out and were fine, but the rest died. Okay. And I don't think farming there is any easier than farming here.
Probably
not.
So,
and I'm reading on it and asking everybody, I can talk to at the fucking plant store, how do I grow this shit? And the dude's like, dude, if you plant this broccoli right now, it's just going to burn and die. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's shit's hard. I'm trying to watch things on YouTube and follow people, all these homesteaders. That shit is difficult.
It is.
All right. You can't just, go down there and go, hey, dumbass, you need to farm sustainably, stupid.
Yeah. And
then just go figure it out. No, that is going to be so fucking difficult. That would be an entire generational thing where it's something that gets passed down. You would have to teach people for decades how to do this and then have them pass it down to their kids or the younger people in society that want to take over. You would have to open college institutions. The young people would have to want to go there, and they would have to be spreading the word on how to do this.
Yeah. Well,
that's difficult.
Pretty much there would have to be incentive programs and, buffers by the government.
Yeah, not the government that's going on right now.
I mean, with the current president, he's for pro-development and, helping out these poor people in Brazil, his, community. And this would be a way to do that without the environmental regulations that he hates so much.
Well, it's because he's funded by agriculture.
Yeah, and this is a way to probably improve agricultural
Well,
profits.
he's funded by the agriculture lobby, which is the people doing the monocrops and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He's funded by the people that don't want to go to sustainable farming. So that's why they want to cut down the forest.
Well, screw them.
Right. Well, I guess we can talk about that. So if the rainforest was doing well, what the fuck happened? If we were doing well and it was down from 2004 to 2016 roughly, and then it shot back up, why did it shoot back up?
Assholes.
Assholes. Well,
one asshole. Okay.
At least two
like
assholes.
Twins. They're like little twins.
People have probably heard by now. The Amazon has a new president, and that's mainly what did it.
Okay, the Amazon does not have a president. Brazil has a president.
Okay, sorry, yes, you're right. Brazil has a new fucking president, who they are calling the Trump of the Amazon. That's why I said Amazon.
Oh, okay.
My bad.
I gotcha.
He's the Trump of the Amazon because this dude is... he honestly kind of does look like Trump's cousin, like Trump's Spanish cousin. He really does. Like, take Trump and give him like a Portuguese tan instead of that orange fucking tan. They look very similar. Like, if you said these two dudes are like distantly related, but in the same family tree, I believe it. Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah. Basically, they're calling this dude the Trump of the Amazon because he took everything that historically Trump is doing here in the United States that we've been dealing with the past couple years, and he just mirrored it down in the Amazon. Same as Trump did here in the United States with the coal miners and, the fossil fuel industry. He was funded by lobbyists from fossil fuel interests. That was his, backing, was these, super PACs. And then the people that they cater to on the voter side is the miners. So the people that are going to lose their jobs if these, industries go under. So
Democrats.
He basically, look at Trump, how he ran on the fact that we're going to, open up more coal mining, more coal factories. I'm going to roll back all these, laws that we have on coal when we're going to make a, major coal economy. And that resonated with, the miners and the working class. We're going to make America great again. So it's the exact same thing down there in Brazil with this president. I know I'm going to butcher his fucking name. Who cares? Fuck that guy. I believe it's President Bolsonaro. That's a hard fucking name. Bolsonaro.
It's Bolsonaro. Because there's an A in there.
There you go.
Bolsonaro.
Portuguese Trump. The Trump of the Amazon, President Bolsonaro. He kind of did the same thing. What you had is he took all of his money from the agricultural industry and he pandered to the people who were making their living surrounding, the exploitation of the Amazon, where basically he said, I'm going to cut down all these regulations on deforestation and burning the Amazon, and, I'm going to open it up for business. And that was his voter base. You also got, a bunch of right-wing, crazy, racist things. They both should be taken off of Instagram.
He's
Twitter.
He's a climate skeptic, so I think...
Climate denier.
Yeah, well, he pretty much believes that climate change, I think, was created so that they could control Brazil and make sure so they can control Brazil with the Amazon and keep them from developing or something, and climate change was
the dude said all sorts of crazy shit. I need to pull up a link of just all the insane fucking things this dude has said. But anyways, it's the same. Living through Trump these past couple years, just imagine a Brazilian version of that. And that's exactly what they're living through down there, where, just like Trump is here, he has rolled back a bunch of regulations. He has tried to punch dump a bunch of money into, the coal and, fracking and all, oil and all of these fossil fuels.
Who, Trump or
Trump.
this guy? Okay, sorry.
Well, same thing. So that's what he did down there is basically they're trying to deregulate all of the environmental protections that the Amazon has.
Yeah.
Also very similar to what Trump has done with our EPA, where, he's going in and he's deregulating every environmental protection that he can get his hands on. And when he can't sign a bill to deregulate it, which is the issue they're having in the Amazon right now, he can't sign a bill that gets rid of the protections on the Amazon. Basically what they do is they just start firing people. So he's mirroring Trump in that way, where if you can't get rid of the EPA, just fire a bunch of people and appoint people who have no interest in the environment whatsoever. So very similar to like how our EPA is being ran by people with fossil fuel interests. He's appointing people to their, rainforest protection agencies that have agriculture interests. And so they just fire people and, put in puppets.
Yeah.
And so basically you cripple the protections and, the laws are still in place. These agencies are still in place, but basically you crippled them to be able to enforce it.
Yeah. So he's been pretty much reducing their effectiveness in enforcing things. So
made it impossible.
Yeah. So one thing that has really stood out to me in researching all of this is that for illegal logging,
right?
There's a agency that will try and track that, and then they'll raid the illegal logger site, and they were actually able to destroy the machinery that was cutting down the trees, and so it kept the people from continuing to cut it down because their machinery was broken, right?
Oh my God, and they're so expensive. You
Yeah.
talk about how poor it is, and you go, okay, well that's a $200,000 tractor.
Yeah. And so what he pretty much did was he made it where these people had to post online
on their website
any planned raids that they were going to be
conducting.
Conducting. Yeah. And so pretty much they're like, all right, well, that kind of destroys the whole purpose.
Right. I mean, that would be the equivalent of Trump going, okay, you know what we're going to do is I want as many guns out there as possible. So the ATF is going to have to post on their government website every raid they're going to do on, illegal trafficking of guns in the United States for like weeks. I mean, it was like you had to like give advance notice for 2 weeks on your public website where you were going to raid and what time. And then basically the organization's like, we're not catching anybody. Like all they have to do is watch our website, and they're just going to dip. I mean, that would be the equivalent of the ATF had to give 2 weeks notice of who they were going to raid, where they were going to raid, and at what time. And then, oh my God, you got there and the guns aren't there. Who would have thought? Yeah, so shit like that where he can make really stupid changes that just cripples the organization. If you can't take the organization out, you can do enough dumb protocol changes that just cripple the fucking thing. And so they've done this in every aspect of protecting the Amazon, which has come under huge backlash. That's actually one thing we wanted to talk about since this has been going on for a while. There has been blowback. There's been so much international attention to this. Every country has been putting pressure on this fucking dumbass to quit doing what they're doing. And then you say they just instituted a 60-day fire ban.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he pretty much was like, well, I'm not supporting this. This isn't me who's causing the fires.
Right.
And
yeah, I'm not doing it.
And so he did institute a 60-day ban on fires. We're going to have to look into how effective that's been. And
yeah,
then,
it just started.
And then even though he's been cutting back the conservation units and pretty much the environmental agency for the government, he did
finally deploy them.
Well, no, he deployed military.
He also let the organizations go out there and do some of these fines and seizures and burn a couple tractors. That
Yeah.
his so the article I was reading today was how his supporters are all pissed off at him because he had basically promised that this wasn't going to happen anymore, that they weren't going to do any more fines or raids or burn any of their equipment. And so like when we were talking earlier where all along the road they were lighting the fires, reportedly that was actually a bunch of his supporters wanted to show their support for the changes he was making, and so they like went out and lit a shit ton of fires along this road, like 300 different fires.
Yeah.
And then now these same people are upset because of all the international attention. He actually, released these organizations to go do their jobs, and so they've been back out this past week or two, back to burning, logging equipment and finding people and shutting shit down.
Okay.
And so his supporters are feeling really
Betrayed.
because they're like, "Whoa, you said we were going to be fine with all this, and you were making the changes, and then you were basically." Failed us because the international community put pressure on you.
What a bitch.
I know, right? You chickened out. Well, the problem is that it was actually from the agricultural interests. So that's what you got to understand is they'll use the people for votes, but they don't give a fuck about the people. They
Sure.
don't. It was the agricultural industry where they found that they can't make money if they can't export their goods. That's where they make money. And so they sell these goods to other countries. So because there was so much, this went so viral and there was so much outcry from the international community, all these countries and companies basically said that if you don't fix this, we're not going to buy your stuff anymore. And so that was going to really hurt the agricultural people who were causing all of this. There was also a big trade deal with Europe. So there was going to be a big European trade deal that was about to go through that basically Europe said, if you don't quit burning down the rainforest, you're not going to get that deal. And so that was going to be a big profit loss. And essentially they're trying to do this to get out of their economic downturn.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was saying. The best thing that people can do is, because this is an economically driven environmental disaster, the best thing that you can do is make it not economical. If you make it to where burning down the rainforest is going to bankrupt you,
Yeah.
well, then they're going to fucking save the rainforest. And the cool thing is that there's actually a fund called the Amazon Fund where mainly, I believe the two biggest donors was Norway and Germany. Gotta fucking love those people. They put in, hundreds of millions of dollars every year.
Norway provided 1.2 billion
Jesus.
donations.
Fucking Christ.
And Germany 68 million.
God damn it, dude. So, I mean, they're getting money to save the Amazon. And so that money was a huge part of their economy. So if you take it away, we gave you that money to protect this fucking place, we'll take it away. And so I think this is actually one time where a president, got cold. I mean, he got pulled back where he went, oh shit, like I'm going to lose, all the fucking economic stimulus that this country is getting. And it's going to make, the economic downturn that much worse.
Yeah. Well,
I wish we could get that in the United States.
Well, it's actually the Norway and Germany did actually suspend their donations, their funds.
Right.
So all that money is no longer for the foreseeable future. Isn't going to Brazil. And that's mainly because those funds were mainly to support conservation efforts and reducing deforestation in the Amazon. And so, Brazil is doing the complete opposite. So they're like, we're not going to support you if you're going to be doing this. And so they were like, nope.
So there's good. You know what? Maybe that we actually have a positive note to leave everybody with. This is a good thing where it really sucked. A lot of shit was burned. Scariest fact is just how much fucking carbon was released. That was something we didn't get to talk about. I wanted to throw out with people. Scariest fucking thing that I read when we were researching this is they basically said if all of the Amazon is burned down, All of it. So like say we just burned the entire fucking forest, this just keeps happening and it's all gone. If you burn the Amazon down, it would release so much carbon that you would basically triple the amount of carbon that's in the atmosphere right now. So you think right now it's bad with climate change, with all of this human carbon. If you burn that forest down, it triples the carbon in the atmosphere. It's basically assured destruction.
Well, and then
Assured.
yeah, and then not to mention that if they're just going to be raising a bunch of cattle in place of the Amazon, well, cattle creates methane, and that's like 3 times worse than no. I think it's a lot more.
Oh, it's bad.
A lot worse than
it would
CO2,
never get there.
But
it would never get there. So you got to understand, the Amazon creates its own ecosystem. So it creates its own rainfall. So every single time you cut down more of the forest, there's actually less rainfall, and you would turn Brazil into an arid Africa-looking landscape. That's what deforestation would do there. It's not like you cut the rainforest down and now there's this huge grazeland. Okay, no. It would turn into an arid, destroyed place, and you can see it in places where the rainforest has been cut down for several decades. It does not look good. It creates its entire ecosystem. So it would never get to that point. I just thought it was an interesting fact.
sure.
Even if they cut down it to 50%, there would be no fucking rainfall, and it would massively hurt their ability to grow crops there.
Yeah, actually, that's something I was reading, because since the rainforest trees do produce a lot of the rainfall in the area, if they keep cutting down the rainforest, they're going to have a lot of water resource issues. And I think they're already experiencing drought and issues with that. And so it just exacerbate their water problems.
So it never get there, but it's just that's a scary thought. That's how much carbon is trapped in that forest. Because it is a massive carbon sink, meaning it takes so much fucking carbon out of the atmosphere. When you burn it down, all that shit gets released.
Yeah.
So you burn that forest down, and we are fucked. But it is a happy note. Otherwise, there was so much international attention here that changes were made almost pretty quickly, and you had a president who we thought, oh shit, he's just another Trump. He's just going to keep thumbing his nose at the environment and just keep steamrolling ahead. This guy got stopped really fucking quick.
Yeah.
And they're starting to turn around and go, okay, maybe this isn't the way we get out of the economic downturn. Otherwise, no country is going to buy our stuff, and everybody's going to boycott us. We need these trade deals. We need this money coming in to save it. Maybe there is more money in saving the Amazon than destroying it.
Yeah. Well,
it's a positive thing.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll keep you guys updated on this. If you haven't noticed, this is only an hour.
Woo.
That was something that we wanted to do, is we wanted to cut down the podcast lengths. A lot of the topics we get into are fucking complicated. There's a lot to it. But we'll usually cover 2 or 3 major aspects of a particular topic. And so what we wanted to do was make the podcast a bit shorter and make it a bit more digestible. And then instead of doing one major podcast with 2 or 3 major points, why not just make a single podcast for each one of those points? Because we can release as many podcasts as we want. So there's not a hosting issue. So why not, maybe we'll record more frequently. So instead of every 2 weeks, maybe we can do it every weekend, hopefully. It really comes down to when we feel excessively competent in whatever topic we're looking into. Like, we want to be extremely confident that we have studied this topic to meet, our criteria.
Yeah.
We want to be able to speak to it as effectively as possible. We're going to make mistakes, but I'd like to minimize that as much as possible. But I would like to make podcasts more often for everybody. Hopefully this is easier for people to listen to. You're not sitting down and trying to watch a whole movie. But we do plan on coming back to the Amazon topic in the future, because
yes.
Just like all of our other topics, there is so much to look at here. Next time when we talk about the Amazon, maybe in a month or two, we'll also kind of give you guys an update on how everything turned out, because things have just started to kind of be dialed back. Pressure from the international community. It's kind of too early to say what's going to happen. Obviously, a 60-day ban isn't
Isn't
a
a lot.
complete ban,
Yeah.
so we'll re-update everything in a couple months when we make the next episode. But otherwise, I'm glad I left you guys on a positive note. I hope you liked it.
Yeah. I think we should mention that we did create a podcast streaming.
Oh, that's right. We got a website.
Sort of.
Yeah.
It's on Podbean.
Yeah.
And so instead of just watching it on YouTube, if you guys prefer to like listen to it while you're driving or something, this is a little bit more easier for you to do that, and you can just listen to the audio instead of having a visual as well, because you might not want to look at our beautiful faces. I
Right.
understand.
Right. Yeah. So, like she said, we do have website hosting on Podbean. So you can go there and listen to all of these podcasts. You just want to listen to the audio. Pretty soon, we will be uploading all of those podcasts to iTunes, Google Play, all of the different platforms. I want to do Pocket Cast so people with Sonos systems can listen to it, because that's how I listen to all our stuff in the house. So I want to be able to listen to our own show. So I'm gonna try to upload it to as many places as possible. Your standard.
Streaming.
Yeah, your standard streaming podcast, sources. But for right now, we're only going to have Podbean. Hopefully, we'll have it to iTunes and Google Play it by the end of the month, maybe next month. But otherwise, I think that's it. I think we did good.
I think so too.
All right.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
listening.
Have fun, everybody. Peace.